The Ask the Experts Theater at CSCMP Edge is sponsored by Gaines.
All right, well, thank you for coming to the final Ask the Experts section for the day. From what I understand, this may be a record crowd over here today, so I know it's the end of a long day of education, but we're going to try to keep this lively. I hope you are here because you have an interest in 3PL warehousing, and I will be honest from the start. I am Jay Strother. I'm the president of the International Warehouse Logistics Association, which is the only trade association for third-party warehousing. So if you're wondering if we're going to go one way or the other on to 3PL or not to 3PL, I assure you we are very pro. So we are here to answer your questions, though, about your relationship with third-party logistics providers, how we can add value, and we have three experts here, and I'm going to let them mostly introduce themselves. These are all members of the association. Immediately to my left, to your right, is Doug Sampson with Acme Distribution in Colorado. To his left is Cam Peel from Camrett Logistics in Virginia. And you may recognize the 2025 CSCMP Convention Chair, Rob Doyle, at the far end there. Previously I'll let him talk about his history in this. So we're going to kind of start this just with some very easy softball questions about why would you work with a third-party logistics provider? How, Doug, do you add value for shippers and retailers and manufacturers?
Thanks, Jay. I would say probably the most important thing is flexibility and flexibility and flexibility. With all the challenges that are faced with all of us, I think third-party logistics providers are the best equipped to adapt to today's needs. And I'll stop there, even though I can go on till the cows come home.
Good. Very good. That is an excellent answer, and that is one of the things we talk about is flexibility and scalability. Our members are the experts in third-party warehousing, and your business may need you to know about that, but we can take care of those things and be flexible and scalable for you. Does Cam or Rob do anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think Doug hit it right on the head. I always use the line, I'm more flexible than Simone Biles. It's not true, but that's what we are in the warehouse industry. I actually go back to one of our first early customers back in the 90s. The plant manager, it was TRW, the company no longer around, but they got bought out by ZF in the mid-2000s. But back in the 90s, they had a contest to basically double their production with no capital increase. And so the plant manager sat there and he got creative, went to a bar or a local watering hole, and on a napkin kind of developed the 3PL model that was going to make him double his production. He had about 60% warehouse in his facility. We were able to turn that to 100%. We shuttled everything he needed for the next hour production 24/7 on the hour. And what that allowed him to do was, one, win the contest. What he didn't know was the contest it's a win, you gain something. It was, if you lose, your plant shut down. So 3 other plants actually shut down during this competition. His 2 plants were able to stay open because of using the 3PL model. Great customer for about 20 years until it moved to Mexico right before COVID. But that right there was kind of why to 3PL. He didn't have any capital acquired. He couldn't use any capital money, but he doubled his production. Actually, he ended up tripling the production.
Great story.
So Rob Doyle, conference chair, but also IWA chair in 2016. I think the main reasons I've always felt people choose 3PLs, one is it allows them to focus on their core competency, making their product, selling their product, and let us focus on the brick and mortar, the HR, the labor piece of it. But we also have expertise in a variety of things, whether it be warehousing, transportation, contract packaging, fulfillment, parcel. So it allows them to focus on what they do best, which is making and selling product.
Excellent. And that brings up a point that our third-party warehouse providers are handling materials and products from multiple companies. They may have dedicated space, but they may have multiple customers in a single facility. And one of the things in that flexibility model is getting to know your customers. So how do you all get to know your customer's business to better understand and help them? So Rob, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. I mean, obviously in the sales process, you spend a lot of time to understand their business, but I think when it goes beyond the initial sale, what's important is to have those, MBRs, QBRs, where you spend a lot of time understanding your customer's business, walking through the KPIs, the metrics, the financials. A lot of the Kenco business is cost plus with our customers, so we spend a lot of time discussing, the financials and the metrics. But I think once you get past that initial sale, the important part is to spend a lot of time, being diligent and structured in those MBRs and QBRs to know their business better.
Very good. Doug?
Oh, go ahead. The secret sauce is in the due diligence right up front and learning what your customer needs are and so forth. I can give a good example. Everybody's heard of Crocs. What we learned from Crocs, we visited their facility where they were doing just a very limited amount of their own warehousing. It took about 5,000 square feet. They were just getting ready to go public. And we saw all their processes and so forth. And we then looked outside at their demand plans, and they were finally getting material. They call it crosslight to make the actual shoes themselves. So the inventory literally went from, in 6 months, 5,000 feet to over 600,000 square feet. And had we not known all of that up front, we wouldn't have been to plan for and make that capacity expansion and be successful. So just diving in, and one of the other things that we do, if the account is sizable enough, we try to see how it's actually operating in today's current environment. That means maybe not being a 3PL, we have it disguised as an insurance company, something like that. We can actually see what's going on today, understand the processes, the technology, things that can be thrown out, things that are must-haves, and then from that, we incorporate that into our plan.
And that's part of that value add again. You're actually learning their business, helping them run their business. So, Cam?
Yeah, so here at Camrett, we kind of just focus on the local manufacturers in Virginia. And a lot of the people that I negotiate with at corporate, I call them cubicle junkies, they're not at the local plant. I'm traveling to meet them, New York, Chicago, North Carolina, wherever their head base is. They might not have ever even seen what that company manufactures. So a lot of it is I have to educate them on not what we do, but what they do, and then also what we do for them. And we actually found ourselves with a huge growth opportunity last year. One of the things that we were actually failing in was their system. It's a proprietary system. It's only for that customer. They own it. But we did not have the skill set to really take off with all the new business that we had. So we actually went after Wes Mabe sitting here in the audience. Thanks, Wes, for being here. Raise your hand, Wes. There you go. And he was their system expert. He went around to all their plants putting it in. He understood it. He saw it. And one of the things was he had been with them for 37 years. He had helped them set up their warehouses. So who better to do it than the guy that's been doing it for 37 years? So after about 6 months of negotiating to bring him over, he retired from that company, came over to work for Camrett, and it's been a great year. Looking for a couple more years with you, buddy.
Very good. One of the other things that IWLA, the association, helps our members keep up with is the rules and regulations that the government or local municipalities or states put on the movement of goods through their states. And so we want to talk a little bit about how do you all keep up with the regulations and help your customers better understand the impact of those things on their movement of goods.
Well, first I'll just give a little plug to IWA and its government affairs group. They are the best in the industry that we've ever seen, and whether it's transportation, warehousing, labor, whatever the need is, they are so actively, and I should say proactively, helping us to be aware of what's coming down and how to engage to either promote or dissuade whatever legislation or policies are coming up. With that being said, one of the things that's happening in Colorado specifically, if you're familiar with Colorado, we have the mountains there. And similar to the S-carb rules out in Southern California, Colorado is going to be adopting that same type of indirect source regulation where the warehouses are assessed a fee, if you will. Rather than taxing a truck or moving vehicle, the intent of the policy, I think, is a little off base because, well, hey, the trucks are causing the pollution and the warehouses are attracting things. So that's a big component of what we're trying to argue against. The difficulty is it's a cost. The cost is going to need to be passed on. It's not adding any value to reduce pollution. So New Jersey has similar rules coming down the pipe. And I think there's one or two other states that are looking at this. Be aware of it. It's one of those things that's a sleeper, and the fees are not cheap. It's about $1 a square foot is what that additional cost is if gas or diesel powered trucks are bumping your docks.
Cam or Rob, anything on that?
Yeah, no, definitely the IWA PAC, the Elevate team, they do great work. The sad thing is what Doug's talking about, Virginia follows Colorado about 5 years behind. So anything that he tells me, I hear about in about 4 to 5 years being talked about in Virginia. One of the things I learned at the first fly-in, I think 2015, 2016, was the overtime rule. And if you're not familiar with it, it was changing it from about $30,000 up to, I think at that time they were talking up to $60,000, so almost doubling it. For any salary employee, you have to pay them overtime if their gross wages are not above that. So because of the fly-in, we were able to look at that and say, wow, we need to bring up, either change them to hourly to where they would get overtime after 40 hours or bump their salary. And so we left that meeting, crunched some numbers, and we actually just went ahead and bumped everybody's salary to where we didn't have to worry about the overtime rule. Now, 3 years later, that was not actually enacted yet, and it actually took about 6 years to get to, I think, today it's at 52,000 or around there. And so we're way past that now, but it was one of our opportunities to, learn from the IWA and the PAC and the fly-in to make sure that we're compliant and right. And then we actually went to our customers and told them about what we're having to do because we had to ask for more money with our rates.
Yeah, what I would add, Cam and Doug covered the macro level, but we do a lot of food and beverage. So for us, we spend a lot of time focused on FDA, USDA regulations and make sure that our sites are compliant, remain compliant. We talk to them regularly to make sure we understand what's coming down the pike as well. So I think, for the sites that are regulated and have those types of issues, that it's important to have a very robust relationship with those organizations and make sure you're prepared for audits and take the extra step and go beyond what's expected.
And there's something else that we're working on right now. The Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism, CTPAT. Manufacturers and shippers and retailers can be CTPAT certified, but if you're using a third-party warehouse, that warehouse can carry your products through it, but can't be CTPAT certified under the law right now. So a year ago, we pushed through the Congress a pilot program so your third-party logistic providers that you're working with can help you speed your supply chain. So the CTPAT inspectors don't have to come into your third-party warehouses often and slow down those imports you're bringing into the country. So if you're doing import business at all, that is something that we are working to help you speed your supply chain altogether too. So watch for more news on that. But if you are CTPAT certified, please try to find a third-party warehouse that at least understands that part of the business. And we have a lot of our members that are ready to go once that program passes. So that's exciting. To hear a lot about technology and integration. How do you ensure visibility for your customers to their inventories, to their product, their velocities, all of that? What are you using and what tools are you using for your customers to be able to see that?
Is that for me?
Whoever wants to take it.
I'll start off. Thank God there's great vendors and so forth with systems and technology that are a lot smarter than I'll ever be. So with most of today's systems, it, cost of entry. If a client can't see inventory, see where it's at, see the velocities, see all the information that they would get from their own ERP, we're failing as a 3PL. And quite frankly, the 3PL industry itself has already realized that. So the technology that we're all incorporating is electronic interfaces, API, EDI, et cetera. Everything's, got a web portal. A lot of the interaction and transactional communication, just with normal needs, is automated. And we're starting to see AI getting into some status updates with where's my shipment, et cetera. Stock shortages, back order management, things like that are just a cost of entry into the game as a 3PL. So we can do a lot more stuff on the floor of the warehouse. I'll let these guys go into that.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll give a shameless plug to Conrad back there. He does all of our yard management and dock scheduling, but our customers see that real time. Along with our WMS, they see that real time. But one of the things that we were able to do, I think that's been industry standard 5-10 years. So to go one step further, we implemented this, tried to do it 2 years ago, fully implemented this year. We're actually looking at our customers' real-time data. So we're now looking at when they're manufacturing something and they're making, let's just say, a vehicle, and we touch 100, 150 parts for that vehicle. When they have a miss on that line and it's not there, let's say it's a wheel, the wheel didn't make it there on time, whatever reason. If it's coded to Camrett, we get told about that right then. It used to be we would get that information maybe once a month, maybe a quarter, and we really weren't able to go back and manage by that data. Now, in real time, we can see, hey, this just got coded to Camrett. Well, let's go investigate. Let's talk to the operator. Let's look at the cameras. Let's look at the apps. Let's look at the audit process. Where did we go in what failed in the process? And we're the first ones to raise our hand when it's us. But a lot of times we're able to combat that, miss against Camrett and say, hey, that wasn't us. And here's the evidence. This is what we did. And it's really actually helped us turn the scorecard around with the customer.
Yeah, one thing I'll add, we have a couple thousand forklifts. So for us, we spend a lot of time on the AI side of that to try to predict, our maintenance costs, get the maintenance costs down, but also from a safety standpoint to be able to tell, who's acting in a certain way on those lifts to, not be safe per se, to coach them, mentor them. But so for us, using AI on the maintenance side of things has helped keep our costs down tremendously for our fleet, but also have our operators operate more safely.
Yeah, and safety is paramount for us. IWLA actually has many programs that are teaching warehouse safety, and that's agnostic whether it's a dedicated warehouse or a retail warehouse or whatever. Safety is safety, but we are training on that regularly. And another way we train to make sure our members are able to serve you better is if you have a specialized product line that you're carrying through hazardous materials, food Rob mentioned, our members are getting up to speed on that and having the certifications to do those things for you and have real exposure or limiting your exposure if you are carrying those kinds of materials. So you guys, I know some of you carry, Rob mentioned food, what other kind of hazardous materials and things? How are you getting those certifications to make sure we're meeting the needs of your customers?
I'll
start with you.
Keep starting on the short guy side. Sorry about the feedback here. We do a lot of medical, pharmaceutical stuff, and quite frankly, if you're familiar with DSCSA, it's a convoluted mistake just because there's no uniformity in the application of your licensing. And it actually has some effect. So there is a national licensing that's come out from the FDA. The problem is each of the states still wants to do its own thing. And they're reliant on one another for me to ship product, for example, from Colorado to California. And if I can't get a license in California because I don't have a license in Colorado, and just having a license, there's a series of inspections and criteria that have to be met in order for you to have that license. But unfortunately, if I don't have a license in a destination city state, that product has to ship to another state with another point and then back into the state to do it properly and legally. So those ins and outs of knowing what states are difficult to work in really affects where you do your supply chain network optimization, at least right now, and it's been this way for about 2 years. So we're hoping to get some uniformity and get things streamlined, because it does have a chance to delay your drugs, prescriptions, and medical devices.
Anybody else, Cam or Rob?
Yeah, no, Rob mentioned AIB earlier. One of the things, it's the only main cert that we have. We don't do the pharmaceuticals like Doug, but whenever the AIB comes to town, my goal is to beat our customer. And so we always compare, scores and notes. And, I think right now I'm 7-0 against them. And I like that because, it helps in the conversations, especially if we talk about quality and we talk about safety. We want to be the best, and there's a reason that we're being hired to do it. So, my goal is not to get pass fail, which I think's probably 800 for passing. So if customer got a 920, I'm challenging our team for a 950, and just always moving that needle to show why we're using Camrett.
I will say too, we saw our first perfect score last year. There you go.
Nice.
I never saw it in my career, actually. But I wanted to mention too that when you have a lot of customers and the requirements are all different, BRC, AIB, SQF, ISO, what we ended up doing was we compiled all those different types of audits and made our own internal audit system that goes from site to site to prepare us, so no matter who comes at us, we're ready for it. But that is a complication that we have in the public warehouse space with so many clients. But we just decided to just make it ourselves and make it very robust and challenging to test our team. So it's worked out well for us.
Very cool.
Well, this is an Ask the Expert section. So we'd love to have you ask your questions of our panelists. I got Joe here in the audience who will bring you a microphone.
So you were talking about multi-tenant facilities, and in the not too recent past, warehousing, and not to oversimplify it, was you either floor stacked, you might have had a bin location, or you had a shelf that you put pallets on. And now we're in an environment where customers are expecting not to just ship traditionally, but you need to pick and ship maybe small pack to their customer. You have to have multiple vendors. And we go to these conferences and you see nothing like more and more robotics and technology. The question that I've been thinking about lately is, and I haven't been in warehousing for a long time. I started my career in warehousing in 98, 99. I was with TNT Logistics. Are the new customer guidelines, you were talking about like ISO and having to meet every certification, is the technology and other stuff making it less expensive but actually harder to have multi-tenant facilities?
That's a good question.
You want to take a start?
Yeah, I'll start it off. The reality for us is that on the automation side of things, we're into it, but we have to have a good use case, good ROI, has to make sense. Not all technology makes sense in our four walls, but we get a lot of pressure anymore from our clients. Seem to want to see the automation and what they think they'll get from that or see from that. So we have a lot of very open conversations, especially with being a cost plus environment, to have pain share, gain share to work through that. But I think the technology is fantastic. Technology is there. It typically stays ahead of what we're trying to accomplish. So I have no issue technology-wise, but there's a lot of customer pressure for advanced technology inside the four walls that we operate.
Yeah, and I know from our standpoint with like robotics and looking at that, one of the hard things for us is pack size. A vendor or your customer might change that pack size. They might not tell you until you unload it. We have high bay racking, 3,500 pallet spaces and about 20,000 square feet, and wire guided system. Well, it needs to be the exact dims to be able to fit in there, and it's not a 40 by 48, unfortunately. And so we recently had this problem where they changed the pack size, but they didn't tell us. But it's like, oh, well, we can get more on the pallet because, well, yeah, the pallet's bigger. But we can't store it where it was supposed to be stored, so we had to go out on the floor and find space for this. But it was just something that, we didn't even know about until it showed up at the door. So that's kind of where we've been at. But I also have one customer that saw, probably online, a drone taking a video and following the forklift driver taking their product and putting it away in the rack. And she was like, that is so cool. You need to get drones. I'm like, so I did look into some of it. And it's very, it does do good cycle counting. I know a couple of warehousemen that do use drones. For us, I looked at it. I was like, okay, well, here's our camera feed. You can watch from this camera. There's the forklift driver. There's the next camera. There's the next camera. And there's your product. And I sent her a little 1-minute video. It wasn't the same. It was the nostalgia of the drones that she was looking for.
I tell you, I've never seen any technology that we as 3PLs wouldn't invest in, as long as there's a proper term with the client. And that, hey, if the client wants drones it shall be. But good conversation, good collaboration between the client and the 3PL gets you grounded a lot better. And I think the good, honest feedback, just like the drone conversation or example just was mentioned, that's the kind of stuff that has to happen. And 3PLs, is a pretty good generalization, are really, really good at that.
And it goes right back to the flexibility we started with. That is like the killer app for third-party warehouses, is that they can embrace the technology when it makes sense. They can embrace new directives faster than maybe you'll be able to, a little more nimble, and that's an exciting thing. So, any other questions from the audience? We have one up in front here, Joe.
Hi, so I'm a student. You guys mentioned due diligence and like how you approach your customers early on in the conversation. What does that look like for you guys? Like, as someone who wasn't really aware of that industry and is trying to learn, what does due diligence look like for each of you?
Good question.
Wow, great question. First of all, what are you working with? What are the needs for the business? So, is it, boxes of yo-yos, or is it hazardous material? How is it packaged? How it's I could probably go on with about 4 million questions just on the product diligence. Then you get into some of the other processes, etc. And I'll let these guys take the rest of this and dive deep.
Yeah, I feel like I'm an expert more on bad business, especially 10 years in sales. I can tell you thousands of stories of what not to do, especially in due diligence. Solar panels, always hit my desk, and, a lot of it is, checking the financials. Right now there's a lot of phishing scams. There's a lot just robots, AI sending malware to us via, hey, price this, but I need this price immediately. And so that's a part of the due diligence, making sure that, one, it's a legit company that you're going to work with and partner with. Also, a lot of our terms, you could have net 30, net 7, net 90 days. Are they going to be around in 90 days? Are they going to pay their bills in 90 days? So you don't want this, you want to be a partner for a long time. We try to marry all of our customers, not date them.
Yeah, I would say too, as a student, when that first call comes from a prospect, it might be 6 or 9 months before you get the first product, or it could be 6 or 9 days. It just depends on the situation. But that due diligence beyond financial is also cultural, to kind of get a good feel for how they operate, how will we get along with each other, as we move forward, how will they interact when things go wrong, because things do go wrong. So when that happens, is there a sense of integrity there and trust and honesty? But that due diligence piece of it, it's to also help us price it properly. So when they contact us, we'll spend a lot of time on understanding the scope of work, what they expect of us, so it's priced properly. We protect ourselves, though, in that way by a lot of our contracts have a clause where after the first 120 days, if the scope of work is way out of whack, we have a chance to reprice it, those types of things. But that due diligence is critical for pricing it properly and getting off to a good start.
The devil is definitely in the details of PL for sure. The better you do that, the other part, I see Mr. Blubaugh in the audience, from a legal standpoint, is tying what you see in doing your due diligence to your operating agreement. And that's what helps you succeed.
Well, Mr. Blubaugh, and we also have our folks from Scopelitas here as well in the back. But yeah, so a big part of this young lady is, that's my daughter, by the way. So,
Hi, Caitlin.
Arizona State soon-to-be graduate, so congratulations. But a big part of that is legal. You got to take the time up front to have the right contract, because when things go wrong, that's when the contract gets pulled out, and to take a look at it. So it's important to have great lawyers to help us, and we have that with IWLA for sure.
Yeah. And I think what Doug said is right. One of the reasons you come to a 3PL is it's a partnership, and finding a partner that knows the questions to ask you about your products will make you think about what you're carrying, and it may give you a perspective on what you're doing in your supply chain that you may not have thought of before. And one of the things that our association has done, and if you are working with a 3PL that's not part of our association, I do hope they are following our standard terms and conditions. We created decades ago standard terms and conditions for warehouses. And Doug can talk more about this a little bit, but it is open and free to the public. And we want your customers to understand, or you to understand, how the third-party relationship can really work. So Doug, you want to talk a little about the standard terms? Michael Reed is here. His firm has really helped us craft those very closely.
Jay, use the standard terms, please. It'll help everybody. That's about as much as I really want to get into. They help us get paid. They help us get, a limit of liability understood between those storing goods with us, and everybody thinks their products are worth millions and billions of dollars. No, we make sure there's a standard way that your limits of liability are stated in your agreement, that both parties. The best agreement is one that never comes out of the drawer. So that's kind of what we aim to do. And with the standardization, at least you don't have so many different off-ramps where you can freewheel and have some very ambiguous disagreements turn into litigation, and that's what you don't want.
Excellent. Well, we have a few more minutes. I can ask some more questions, but if you have more, I want to make sure that we've got you covered. Wes?
What do you gentlemen think is the biggest challenge facing 3PLs today?
I think it always kind of starts with the labor side of things. We're in a good spot of late to be able to recruit and retain good people, but a lot of ebb and flow in that. So a lot of time is spent recruiting and training our folks, investing in them to make sure they stay. One of the biggest challenges is trying to avoid that turnover that can occur. So that always, to me, is the thing that I watch closely to make sure we're maintaining our people and recruiting the best and the brightest. So I think that and technology. Technology meaning, can we stay ahead of the curve with our partners to make sure we have what our customers need? It seems to evolve and change so fast. John Phillips mentioned it. Every 4 years, it seems to be it's not in vogue anymore. So it's important to have good partners that can keep us ahead of the game.
Yeah, I'll answer that from the trucking standpoint, especially with Mark here. Nuclear verdicts, something that's talked about a lot, but not often enough. Juries nowadays, they hear, let's give $10 million, let's give $100 million, because they're a trucking company. And everybody's seen the ads. Every single city has the billboards of injured, especially by a truck, call us. Trucker can do nothing wrong and still lose the lawsuit. Some good friends that are lawyers say, every time you go to court, it's 50-50. Doesn't matter how good your case is, especially in a jury, it's 50-50. So nuclear verdicts is probably the thing that keeps me up, especially with our trucks on the road.
these guys did a really good job. I'm going to kind of come back, and that would be using the right technology for the right solution that also helps you keep your people and keep your culture intact. Yes, we're the nuclear verdicts, the regulation, legislation, everything sort of works against you, and you better be proactive in reaching out and knowing what's coming down the pipe at you. But with that, those challenges are what 3PLs are really good at solving, because you have to be proactive in order to stay in business.
Very good. So our association has been around for 135 years. We were founded as the American Warehousemen's Association in 1891, and we have evolved with the industry. Something we talk about a lot is rail movement of goods, and we are very active in making sure that we are able to keep the goods movement happening on our rail system and dealing with the Class 1 railroads. That was something that this association has been dealing with since before there were trucks. So we deal with all transportation, and Doug is very, very active in that. Doug actually serves as a small shipper advisor on the rail. RSTAC is the name of it's for the Service Transportation Board that oversees rails. So Doug, you want to talk a little bit about the rail service and small shippers?
Sure. One of the things, obviously, we're aware of the UPNS merger that's coming up. Although it's not yet formal, we see it in the press and so forth, but the paperwork hasn't even been filed properly with the STB in order to make this happen. It's something that affects every one of us that is served by the rail, and this includes the many thousands of units on an intermodal every day, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm happy to be a resource for anybody to get the ear of the board if that's a value. That's one of the things, whether you're 3PL, not 3PL, shipper, or what have you, if you have some issues and concerns with rail service, performance, the D word, demurrage, things like that, happy to help.
Excellent. So, any closing comments from you guys? What is one true thing about a third-party warehouse that you find your customers come to you and say, I wish I had known this then, or you guys have been so great at this? I'd like to hear some of those success stories.
I've always thought that it's easier to manage a vendor than an employee. And that just has held true. I've been doing this for about 46 years now. But you have much more control over a vendor, how they perform, and so forth, than you ever do over your own employees. And that's why I think we are continuing to grow.
Yeah, I guess for me, one of my first, coming back 10 years ago to the company, one of my first sales, after a year with business, we did about $3 million with this customer. Our inventory was 100% according to them. We counted at 99.98 because 2 pallets in that high bay were reversed. They were there, so it counted. They were just, one was an A and supposed to be an B, and B was supposed to be an A. But why I say that is, after that inventory, they used to allow for a 10% inventory loss or shrinkage. That was $30 million in our facility. That's $3 million. We paid for ourselves on paper that year just by doing inventory correctly for them.
That's amazing.
And I would just say, stay relevant to your customers and help them reduce their own costs as well. So going back to the food side of things, with Walmart, Target, et cetera, and the fines they have and those types of things, chargebacks, we spend a lot of time devising a system to help protect them and protect us against those types of chargebacks. And it's saved them millions of dollars over the last 10 years. So I think that sort of partnership and being in the foxhole with them is important, to share that risk and work with them. But as a 3PL, we need to make sure that we're a trusted partner and help them reduce their costs and avoid trouble to have a long-term relationship.
Good. Any other questions from the audience? All right, well, I want to thank our panel today. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Cam. Thank you, Rob. We'll be around. We actually have a booth right over here, too, so come see us.